Welcome to the final teaching session of Multinational Enterprise Strategy and Performance. During this session, we will look at the elements of successful multinational operations. When we look at the outcomes, it will be that after completing the activities associated with this teaching session, you will be able to discuss the strategies for competing in emerging markets, apply the rat and cat model to evaluate the success of international expansion strategies. Thirdly, evaluate the reasons for failed international strategies using cases of South African companies. And this outcome you will cover when doing the syndicate assignment. And then finally, explain the key factors for multinational success. There's no pre-recorded lecture for this specific teaching session. You have to work through the materials that I have provided. On this slide, you will see an outline of the activities and the content that has to be covered for this final teaching session. So firstly, we're going to look at the strategies for emerging markets. For this session, for that specific outcome, you have to read through the section on the strategies for emerging markets in your prescribed textbook. And you will find that on pages 307 to 312. When we refer to the online textbook, that will be with the online page numbering, you will find that on page 111. I've also assigned some SmartBook questions to test your understanding of the reading. This assignment is not compulsory, but it will help you to gauge, to work through the material and gauge your understanding of the content you've read. Secondly, we will look at, we will cover the capacity-based framework for global expansion. This is a very important model and also a very interesting model. For this section, you have to read through you have to watch Professor Lassard's video clip in which he explains the rat and cat model. And it's a very important model because it provides a framework for understanding the elements of successful international expansion. And he also applies it to the Cemex Cement company, and that he uses that example to explain how the model could be applied in practice. You could also use the rat and cat model when evaluating the reasons why the South African companies' external or expansion strategies have failed. It is not the only aspects that you need to consider, but it would provide you with a good starting point to consider those reasons for failures. So the syndicate assignment covers both the content areas 1 and 2. Firstly, because we're looking at South African companies, we'll cover the strategies for emerging markets, and secondly, the application of the rat and cat model to the South African context. Topics 3 and 4 is really a summary or an overview or revision of the content that's been provided. So firstly, you can look at Professor Tolman's overview of multinational strategy. It's a fairly long video clip. It's almost an hour and a half. And when you watch that video clip, you can take notes and add to your previous notes and content that we cover. So it provides a summary and a refresher of all the topics we've covered. And then fourthly, I've provided some research on the 10 key factors for multinational success, and I've also framed that in with the content that we've provided, and I'll talk you through that on the next slide. A study by James Bolt has investigated the 10 key factors that are similar in all successful multinational companies. And they include, firstly, that these companies have a vision and that they see themselves as a multinational company, or they identify as a multinational company, and they are comfortable with the global arena. That point was also made during week 1 in the video clip by Professor Gupta. Also, though, successful multinational companies have a clear, sustainable competitive advantage. They've got an innovative approach that is rare, either in terms of its cost or in terms of its differentiation in different markets. And this is similar to what Professor Lazard argued in this week's video clip. Also, they've got aggressive and effective implementation of their global strategy and backing it up with capital investment. During week 2A and B, we looked at those the things that are important for having an effective implementation plan. Also, then it has to be goal-orientated and efficient in terms of its implementation. And they also do not confine innovation to the home market. We've spoken about that point during the organizational structure lecture and when we spoke about culture and the importance of involving divisions from other countries in designing and improving products. Then in the 5th place, these companies view the world as one large market rather than several small markets. We've covered that point during week 1 and in week 2A. And they have an organizational structure that are designed to handle their unique problems. In terms of organizational structure and the effective use of organizational structures was covered during week 3A. They also have a system that keeps them informed about political changes around the world, and they adjust the operations accordingly. And then they have management teams that are intentional to enable them to do better and respond better to the demand of the home country. We've covered this during when we spoke about global integration versus national responsiveness during week 2B and also during the lecture on cultural integration. They also allow their outside directors to play an effective role in the operation of the enterprise. So that is the non-executive directors are involved and they use their expertise in terms of international operations. During the lecture on performance management, we've briefly covered that point. And then in the 10th place, or finally, it is well managed and tend to follow important guidelines to remain close to the customers, having a lean organizational structure and encouraging autonomy and entrepreneurial activity amongst its personnel. Okay, and these are the 10 factors that summarize what multinational companies need to do if they want to be successful. And these are the 10 things that these companies should actively include in their strategic plans.